Hey, my Etsy store is actually working out pretty well for me so far. What a nice surprise. Whoa, okay, clearly I've done something wrong. Or have I? You know what, get this light out of my face. Whether you're a new user on Etsy or you've been on the site for a while, you are all susceptible to having a ban triggered against your account. It's nothing that you've done, sometimes they just happen by accident. It's helpful to know what are these bans and can they be avoided before they even happen. So relax, I'm gonna walk you through some of the most common scenarios that can be easily avoided. My name is Talish from Printify, and here are the things that you shouldn't do to avoid getting banned on Etsy. Look, I get it, getting banned is not fun, and having any loss and an opportunity to sell your products is not great. But the thing to understand is there are levels to this game. Not all bans are the same when it comes to Etsy. So let's start off with the absolute worst one, which is a permanent ban. Now this is for those significant violations, and the thing that makes this ban special is that Etsy doesn't have to give you a warning. They can just shut your account, you don't have access to any of your money. In fact, the way that they work with that is when they receive the complaint that triggers that permanent ban, essentially any money that you've made up till that point, you have access to. After that, until they do that review, which can take however long they want, you have no access to your funds. Now, the second type of ban is the one that we see most often. It's called a temporary ban, and unlike the permanent ban, you can still get into your account here. It doesn't last very long, but the most important thing is Etsy does let you know before it takes place. They'll send you a warning email, they'll tell you exactly what you have to do to fix it, and once you've submitted that, they will reopen your account in probably a week or two. Now, the third type of ban doesn't happen very often, but it does exist, and it's called a search pause. Now, this can happen for a bunch of many little reasons, even because you don't have any activity on your account. Maybe you've had one too many bad customer reviews, or if they've heard that you've had some shipping issues. And essentially what this means is they will remove your items from Etsy search. So customers can still go to your store, they can still buy your products directly, but if they're trying to look them up, they won't be able to find them. The good news is that it doesn't take much to lift these type of bans. In fact, they're less intense than what happens if you're in a temporary or a permanent ban situation because, again, just respond to Etsy's warning email, and sometimes I've even heard of customers getting their account active within just a few days. So when it comes to the rest of them, this one is actually not that bad. Let's start off with a few sins that Etsy absolutely cannot abide. The things that will make Etsy say to you, hey, we're not friends anymore. And the first thing that comes to mind is items that contain any kind of discriminatory or hate speech. Now, obviously, that makes sense. But here's where it gets tricky. Even items that can be seen as harassment if they contain any kind of rude language or swear words can lead to a permanent suspension. So if you are using any kind of designs that contain words that are risque, you want to make sure that you're being very clear about the way that you're using them so that you don't trigger that permanent ban for harassment and discriminatory language. The other reason for a permanent ban that you might not be aware of is if you are reselling or drop shipping items. The rules are clear. You can't sell another brand's items and you can't sell items that are shipped from elsewhere. And that's because Etsy defines itself as a site for handmade or vintage products, and they're gonna make you prove that an item came from you, like for example with a shipping label. Now I know what you're thinking, where does POD fit into all this? Well, POD is the exception, and if you are using print on demand in your account setup, you have to specify that your products are made as handmade with production assistance, and then you can even add Printify as your production partner. Now, this is one of the most common reasons why a store is suspended. So pay particular attention to that setup process in the beginning so that you can avoid a permanent ban later on. The last thing that Etsy absolutely cannot stand is if you are selling services. Remember, Etsy is a site for products. You can't provide any freelance or creative services. This is not Craigslist. And if you do, it is an immediate closure of your account. So remember, stick to products, don't try to sell anything that you can do, and you won't go wrong. Now, for the other types of offenses that aren't as serious, those are the ones that lead to those temporary bans. And the most common temporary ban reason that we see is for selling copyrighted products. Now, the big misconception I hear is, well, hey, if I see other accounts selling trademark merch, maybe I can too, and nothing could be more wrong. Now look, Etsy doesn't check all the listings, but that doesn't mean that they won't. You will eventually get reported. That algorithm will catch up with you and they will shut you down. But the worst part is that if you do that, there is a potential for a lawsuit. So the main rule is check before you list. But when we talk about trademark products, what we're essentially talking about is originality. And here's where Etsy can get very, very specific. If your product listings, your images, even your bio are not original and they suspect that you've copied it from somewhere else, that is a reason for a temporary ban. Look, the thing is, what they're afraid of is that you're stealing somebody else's intellectual property, because copycat stores pop up on Etsy all the time. So make sure those images are original. Write that bio yourself. Try to make it as individual to you as possible and you won't go wrong. Speaking of listings, one of the things that you might not know will get you a temporary ban is having too many listings at once. Too many orders, too many order cancellations. That immediately sounds the alarms at Etsy, because what they're thinking is, hey, there's somebody trying to set up an account very quickly, and that sounds super fake. Again, those copycat stores are a real problem for Etsy. So if you put up all these listings at once, or if they're figuring that there's a lot of problems happening very quickly, that is a reason for Etsy to immediately shut down your account for a temporary ban. Another common reason for a temporary ban is one you might not think of, but it is actually very important, and that is if you are driving traffic away from Etsy. And the way that this happens pretty commonly is when people put their website link in their product descriptions. That makes Etsy very, very angry. Think about it from their perspective. They don't want people coming to their site just so they could go somewhere else. So they let you put your store site in one place and one place only, and that is your bio. Put it there and leave it out everywhere else. Now, the last issue for temporary bans that you might see very often is your personal or your payment information not being up to date. Whether you've created multiple accounts that don't have accurate personal information, or maybe your banking information isn't up to date, that is a good enough reason for Etsy to stop your account temporarily. Even something simple as not having enough funds in your account to pay for ads that you put on Etsy could be enough for them to put a temporary ban. So make sure, as a basis, all that stuff is up to date and you won't have to encounter this problem in the future. Look, even if you're doing everything right, sometimes these bans can happen for reasons that are beyond your control. It could be something happening behind the site that's triggering this. But the best practice is to do what you can to avoid them, but also to plan ahead to keep your business going in spite of them. I'm talking about backing everything up, your product listings, your order history, your payment history, and your reviews. Keep everything saved. Stay connected to your customers on your social media. Let them know where else they can find your products in case that ban does take effect. But as always, like and subscribe to this channel for more Etsy tips and also to stay on top of all things print on demand.